This is GeckoLinux 422.16.12.13.0 with the Cinnamon desktop. You can find out all about GeckoLinux by going to their GitHub page. Basically, GeckoLinux is a derivative of openSUSE Leap 42.2 in this case. It's also available in a Tumbleweed edition, and it differs from openSUSE in a number of different ways. For one thing, openSUSE does not have a live disk option. It only has an installation disk image. You can't run the program from the live disk without installing it. And it comes on a very large ISO file over 4 gigabytes with several different desktop options included. You can then choose them as you're installing. GeckoLinux comes on a live disk, about 1 gigabyte in size, depending on the version. You can try it from the live disk without installing it, and it comes with a specific desktop. At the moment there are 4 versions with the KDE, GNOME, Mate, and Cinnamon desktops. GeckoLinux also includes restricted codecs that are not included with openSUSE, and it's a little more friendly with proprietary software than openSUSE is. It also uses the Calamares installer rather than the traditional YAST installer, and that's a lot easier to use than the traditional openSUSE installer. I'll have more about that. One thing I wanted to mention, I tried to install it on the 6th of 6 partitions on my external drive, and as it has with other distributions, Calamares just couldn't handle that. While it was trying to read information about the existing partitions, it just became confused and wouldn't proceed. Perhaps if I had let it sit longer, it would have straightened itself out. As I have done before, I simply installed a new partition table on the external drive, wiping everything out, and let GeckoLinux have the first shot at the freshly formatted drive. I'm using a wired connection, an Ethernet connection. However, the live disk system did recognize my Wi-Fi network and let me connect without any problems. Now I'm going to show you the new installation process by running the GeckoLinux Calamares installer in GNOME boxes, realizing that of course it's slightly different when you install to actual hardware. So I'm going to press enter for GeckoLinux Cinnamon. It's loading the Linux kernel. On the live system, the username is Linux and the password is also Linux. I'm going to click on enter. Now I'm not going to do much in the live session here, but I'm going to change the aspect ratio. Closest one I can find here is 1280 by 720. Apply. Keep this configuration. Now I'm going to click on the Calamares installer. Double click on the Calamares installer. Now I'm entering the live installer password, which is Linux, L-I-N-U-X. Language is English, United States. Next. I'm not in New York, I'm in Chicago. Next. English US with the default keyboard. Now, I'm going to do the manual partitioning myself, even though I really don't have to. This is a virtual disk. I could just simply erase the disk and start over. Alright, I created a new partition table for my virtual disk. And free space, I'm now going to start adding partitions. You don't have to do it in this particular order. I'm going to add a swap partition. Linux swap. OK. Now I'm going to click on free space. Click on create. And I'm going to devote the rest of it to an ext4 partition mounted at /, which is root. Next, I'm going to enter my name, password, I'm not going to log in automatically, and I'm going to click on next. So this is basically a summary of what's been decided so far. And since this is a virtual disk, it's called device SDA, but it is not my internal device SDA. I have a chance to change things. I don't want to. Now it's installing the system, creating new ext4 partitions. It's unpacking the file system. Now it's installed, and I'm clicking on Restart Now and then Quit. As I said, I've installed Simple Screen Recorder. The pulse audio volume control was already installed. I just put it on the panel. Now this language installer here shows up on the background by default when you enter the system. The installation is really speedy. It took about 10 minutes. But one reason for that is it doesn't download language packs as it's installing. So to download the language packs, you have to click on this installer. I have already done that, so I'm going to get rid of it. You can also get it from the menu later if you want to change something. This is not the latest Cinnamon menu. If you want the latest one at this point, I think you're going to have to go to Linux Mint 18.1. Let me just go through a few of the installed applications. Under Accessories, you've got the Archive Manager, the Calculator, Parcelite, Qt4 settings, Screenshot, and the Text Editor. Under Graphics, you've got the PDF Document Viewer, GThumb, which is an image viewer. You've got another image viewer, LibreOffice Draw, and Simple Scan. Under Internet, you've got Firefox, Pigeon, Thunderbird, and Transmission. Under Office, you've got the document viewer, the LibreOffice Meta Package, LibreOffice Calc, LibreOffice Draw, LibreOffice Impress, and LibreOffice Writer. Now, the one component of LibreOffice isn't included is LibreOffice Base, the database application. That's very common to have that excluded, but you can get it from the repository. Under Sound and Video, you've got Clementine, Pulse Audio Volume Control. I installed Simple Screen Recorder, and it comes with VLC Media Player by default. Under Administration, you've got etc. sysconfig editor, an application for configuring the bootloader, the date and time, the dconf editor, disks, files, the file browser, firewall, fonts. By the way, I should mention that one of the differences between GeckoLinux and regular openSUSE is that the font rendering is much more sophisticated in GeckoLinux. And you've got gparted hardware information, which is quite extensive. Now I have to scroll down here. There's a lot under Administration. Host names, HP Device Manager is included by default. Install remove software, which is the YAST application. Kernel settings, language installer, the one I just erased from the desktop. Mail server, manage printing, media check, network settings. There's a lot here. NTP configuration, online update, partitioner, print settings, printer, proxy, release notes, remote administration, SAX3, which is a SUSE Advanced X configuration utility. More yet, you've got the security center and hardening, services manager, snapper, which is for rolling back the system if you're using the BTRFS file system. I'm not using it, so this wouldn't work. Software management, again, software repositories. Sudo, this is for configuring your sudo utility. SUSE Studio Image Writer for putting ISO image files on USB sticks. System keyboard layout, system log, system monitor. Getting near the end here. The terminal emulator, user and group management, users and groups, Xterm, terminal emulator, another terminal emulator, and YAST, the large control center. Under preferences, you've got accessibility, account details, applets, backgrounds, Bluetooth, color, date and time, disklets, desktop display. Again, more than fits on this menu. Effects, extensions, fonts, general, graphic tablet, hot corners, keyboard, mouse and touchpad, network, notifications. Panel, power management, preferred applications, privacy, Qt4 settings, screensavers, sound, startup applications, system information. A lot of these are duplicates. System settings, themes, window tiling, windows, workspaces. Under places, you've got your major data folders, documents, music, pictures, videos, downloads. And then under recent files, well, you'll have the ones that I just looked at. Now, as you add more things to the favorites column here, this menu will grow taller and you won't have to do as much scrolling, so there may be an advantage to adding more to the favorites. Too bad you just can't make it bigger, but that's the way it works. Now you also have this item here, system settings, control center. It shows on the lower right there. So I'm going to click on that. This is basically the Cinnamon control center. If you go way down to the bottom here, you find YAST, and by clicking on that and then entering your password, you can go to the YAST control center, which is you can go to the YAST control center, which has even more, but different things. So you've got two control centers, and you can find a lot of what was in those menus in the control centers here. Under the Cinnamon control center, you have system information. Gives you the operating system, the Cinnamon version, which is not the latest. As I said, it's 3.0.7, and the latest edition of Linux, Mint 18.1, it's 3.2. The Linux kernel is not the latest either, but it's a stable version. Shows you my processor, my memory, size of the hard drive. In this case, it's a partition on my external drive. And then the graphics card. I'm going back to the Cinnamon Control Center. Now enter effects. I've left a lot of these things enabled. Normally, to get things to work faster, I would disable them, but I'm not going to do that here. I want to discuss hot corners here because I haven't done that recently. I'm going to use one at the upper left, show all workspaces. You can change these, you see. Show all workspaces, show all windows, show the desktop, run a command. I'm going to leave this show all workspaces, and this will show all windows over here. Now I'm going to enable hover. That will get those to work. So let me open something. Accessories, calculator. Now, when I go to the upper left-hand corner, I have another workspace available. I can go to that. Also, I can add more here. Add 4 workspaces if I want. So I'm going to go to workspace 2. I'm going to add more accessories. The text editor. And under administration, I'm going to add disks. I'm going to go to the third workspace. And I'm going to look for the terminal emulator. Here's the terminal. I'm going to open that. And I'm going to run top. So now I'm going to go to the upper left corner, and I can see what I've got in all of those workspaces. Going back to this one, I'm going to minimize this and see what happens. Now, unlike GNOME 3, where minimized windows don't show up in the other workspaces, in Cinnamon they do, so even though this is minimized, I still know that it's in that workspace. Now, you can close applications from this by clicking on the X, but you can't do much else from here. You have to actually go to the workspace to do it. If I go to this workspace, I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to click on the upper right. It shows both windows that are open in that workspace. even the one, including the one that's minimized. So I'm going to go back to this. Well, that got rid of that workspace altogether. If I want to close individual files from here, I have to go to the Show All Windows corner. Oh, here it says close this terminal. I have to confirm that. I don't want to turn off the volume control or simple screen recorder. But now I want to minimize that again. I don't want to see it. So this is a brief look at GeckoLinux Cinnamon. Let me mention that I also downloaded and tried GeckoLinux Mate, and I didn't like the way it was configured, and it wasn't as configurable as the Mate that comes with Ubuntu Mate, for instance. So I don't particularly recommend GeckoLinux Mate. The other two, KDE and GNOME, I've covered those from the regular openSUSE installation. But if you want to get them on a live disk, this is a very good way to get them. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.